welcome to Elements of Ayurveda, Empowering Wisdom of Life. I'm your host, Colette, and in this podcast, I hope to empower you to take charge of your own health by sharing the holistic teachings of Ayurveda, the ancient healing tradition from India. We will also discuss topics like health and wellness, nutrition, yoga, fitness, meditation, breath work, and much more, as well as interviewing lots of inspiring people along the way. My humble wish is to help you to connect to your true nature, to Mother Nature, and to each other. If you like the content, be sure to subscribe to the show, and the new episodes will automatically download for you to enjoy. If you're new to Ayurveda, I recommend you listen to the first couple of episodes where I do an introduction to Ayurveda and the mind-body types. I've also set up a Facebook group for us to connect and to support each other, and I'd love for you to join me over at Elements of Ayurveda podcast group. And now, here's the show. Hello, and welcome to Elements of Ayurveda. I have Amy here with me today. Hi, Amy.
Good morning. I'm happy to be here.
And great to have you as always. So just before we get started, so we're very excited about this week's episode. I just want to check in with you, Amy. How are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. I feel energized and happy and excited to be alive and so grateful to get to share the topic with you this morning that we've chosen.
Yeah, absolutely. So Amy just got back from the NAMA conference, and NAMA is the National Ayurvedic Medical Association, and they just had their annual conference in Texas, right, Amy?
Exactly. It's just outside Dallas. It's a little town called Plano, Texas, and it was a wonderful venue.
Okay, so Amy's going to share her notes with us, which is just amazing. Thank you so much. But Amy's going to just share highlights from the conference and give us an inside scoop into what was going on, what really stood out for her. And I'll definitely be picking your brain along the way throughout this episode, Amy.
Thank you so much for just letting me share this excitement. Some of you are Ayurvedic practitioners and people interested in benefiting from Ayurveda. Others of you are yoga therapists that are starting to combine some Ayurveda into your yoga therapy, and the general public. I think you'll all be very excited to hear about this. So the thing I love about the NAMA conference is the purity of it. The people who show up and do the work and give the presentations are truly living their passion. It's not superficial in any way, shape, or form. You can tell that it is something that they are connected to from a very, very deep place within themselves, and you can feel it. You walk around and you just feel people living from their own light, letting their own light shine outward. And that's pretty unique. I mean, I've been to a lot of yoga conferences, and as much as they're fun and entertaining and you get a bunch of great knowledge, actually NAMA has a little bit different feel. There's such a purity in the hearts of the practitioners that I just feel very, very connected to. And so the first thing I'd like to talk about is one of the keynote speakers is a man from India named Partap, P-A-R-T-A-P, Chauhan, C-H-A-U-H-A-N. And he is a cutting-edge technology guru that loves Ayurveda. And so he started in 2003 this thing called teledoc. And this was an app that he created before there were even smartphones. And basically what would happen is a person would live in a village where there wasn't maybe even electricity or, any kind of smartphones or communication. And he would have one of his guys ride a bike to the village in 2003, collect the health information from the people and the families that were suffering. Then that person would transmit that health information via a system called teledoc and get a consultation from an Ayurvedic doctor who is maybe back in Mumbai or Delhi or someplace, and then bring the medicines and the prescriptions and the lifestyle management back to the people in the village, ride his bike back there. And it was really highly criticized at first because there was no pulse taking, right. There was no seeing people in person. It was all done through this little man on his bicycle. And what he said is that even in ancient times, in the ancient texts, there was long-distance consultation between doctor and student because, of course, if you're living out in the village, a doctor can't always get out there. So his thing was, well, yeah, we got criticized, but they even in the ancient texts, they're doing this, which is interesting to me because now we're thinking about doing telemedicine through Skype, through Zoom. And this started way back in the ancient texts.
Isn't that amazing? But it's amazing this doctor's dedication to his work back then, and then the poor person biking back and forth.
I know.
But the dedication, and it goes back to what you were saying at the start about the vibe at the NAMA conference, where it's a holistic vibe. Everyone is totally integrated and practicing what they preach, and the energy flows. And with this doctor too, he's totally devoted to his gift and to his practice, and this is his absolute purpose, and goes to great length to make sure that he's healing people even at a distance.
Exactly.
Like this.
And the people in the villages, they are not going to have a doctor come out to them. They are not going to get this healing. They are going to die from diabetes if they don't get their medication. So, we can critique things and say it's not perfect, but the truth is he's helping the underserved who would not get any help, and listen to what he's done. So that was starting in 2003. Now it's 2018, and he has this thing called the Jiva Telehospital. That's what it's called. He has 350 Ayurvedic doctors near Delhi, full time. He has 70 clinics that do this telemedicine all over India. Every single patient is recorded in a database, and they see with all the doctors involved, 350 doctors, they see about 6,000 patients a day.
Oh my goodness.
Yes. And so they have the largest Ayurvedic patient database, and they track every single thing, and they research every single thing. And now he has a TV show that reaches 500 million people. He has 5 shows per day to educate people on Ayurveda. And so he's been the first one to establish data-driven protocols for Ayurveda, and basically reaching so many people. And what he's able to do now is validate that the medicines that they give in Ayurveda actually work, that the treatment protocols that they give actually work.
Right, because he has all that data.
Yes, and so he says he's going to open this database with all of the research to all of us in a few years. He's still pulling it all together, but anybody will be able to go in and see the data-driven Ayurvedic results. And so some of the things that he shared with us is that he can show that for people with nervous system disorders, 60% of them have a really, really strong vata aggravation. He can show that for people with skin conditions, about 60% of them have a really strong pitta aggravation. And we're talking about 33,000 cases.
Wow.
It's huge, right? Yes. And then he shows, for kapha or respiratory kapha aggravated people, very high percentage of them have respiratory diseases. So I just think it's amazing. I was blown down. I walked in with my coffee and my computer thinking, oh, who's going to talk today? And my jaw dropped open. I was like, who is this guy? Wow. It was just shocking.
Wow. And the fact that he built this app before smartphones were even around, that's amazing.
He's a visionary. And
yes.
People are probably still complaining about him, and, he's not doing this right and that right, and there's no pulse taking, whatever. If you're doing good work in the world, we all need to stop complaining and just get to work.
Exactly, because, nothing is ever going to be perfect, and if we wait for everything to be perfect, then we'll never be out there educating others or helping others. And the pulse diagnosis is very challenging. It takes a long, long time for people to get this accurate, and it can be very challenging to learn.
And, the really great Ayurvedic doctors that I know, they're looking at a variety of things, the color of your eyes, how your skin looks, your speech, they're looking at the whole person, and then they take the pulse as almost the way it's been described to me as like a backup to say, is the pulse matching what I think I see, right?
Exactly.
So to put all of the assessment or diagnosis on the pulse is really short-sighted. There's so many other ways to understand what's happening in the human system.
So he's going to release this data.
Yes, in a few years. I mean, I don't know, to go from 2003 with a couple kids on bikes to 350 full-time Ayurvedic doctors and the largest database in the world. It's just, talk about fulfilling your dreams. And it just shows me that we can all do good work. We actually probably have to set our goals higher.
Yes.
We settle for less. I mean, he was just this normal guy up there, little grandpa, up there doing his thing. Yeah.
Wow.
It's so
That's
beautiful.
Amazing. Well, thanks for sharing that. That's fantastic. And that this data now acknowledges that Ayurvedic medicine and Ayurvedic healing is working on these conditions. And he has thousands of people, tens of thousands of people to prove it.
Absolutely. And 6,000 more every single day. My goodness.
Yes.
Yeah. Wow. So that was one highlight. But another highlight, I don't know if you're willing to move on. There's just so many juicy things that happened. I just wished I could just live there. Many of you know Robert Svoboda, and he gave this Saturday night talk after dinner, and it was very, very entertaining. He's very funny. He, as far as I could tell, he had a few ideas about what he wanted to say, but he really let spirit flow through him, which I appreciated. Yeah. It's that trust of knowing that when you get up there and open your mouth and you are willing to be a channel for the divine, that the right thing will come out for that audience. It was just so powerful for me to see him trust himself enough to do that. And not that I don't want to plan for my talks, but I also want to allow space within my system that if the talk needs to go in a certain direction or not, that I listen to my intuition in that moment. And so, he started off by saying that Ayurveda is about the body and the mind and the senses and the soul, and that Ayurveda is like an instruction manual for how to operate your human system and keep it in balance.
Yeah.
And this word Swastha, Svastha, Swastha, Sva means self, and Ta means to be situated. So according to Robert Svoboda, the true definition of health, body, mind, and spirit health, is to be situated in yourself with a capital S. And by that he means connected to your soul, connected to your deeper mind, connected to your deeper heart, not the mind that is so externally distracted by, your senses going outward and trying to fill the deep hole within yourself that hurts and suffers, like not trying to fill it with shopping or eating or smoking or sex, but rather to pull those senses inward and to learn how to do that and let yourself be situated deep, deep inside of yourself, connected to yourself.
I love that.
And, basically what he said is that there's a mind inside of us called the buddhi mind that is supposed to be very discriminating. Yes, this would be good for us. No, this would not be good for us. Yes, I think I'll choose the hot tea. No, I think I don't need coffee anymore because I'm already anxious, right? And that the buddhi mind is the one who's supposed to make those decisions to operate the human system in a way that is balanced and sustainable. But unfortunately, what tends to happen is that our senses are so interested in all the external things in the world, that they kind of start pulling the system in a new direction. They take us away from this discriminating buddhi, and that's when all the problems start. The buddhi is no longer in charge and making those discriminating decisions for our best health, and pretty soon we're off and running with our cravings and our desires and our aversions, and over time, many bad decisions about our health, we end up sick. And that's what Ayurveda is here to help us get back in touch with our deeper mind, our buddhi, to be more discriminating and not let the sensory organs take over, which ultimately makes us sick. So what do you think of that?
Yeah, what came to me with that is to pacify the senses, as we do when you're doing cleanses, or an understanding not that we live in a society where there's a lot of sensory overload daily, and to be really mindful about making sure that you're not overburdening your senses.
Yeah.
Because that could be very aggravating to the nervous system. But I do think it's really important, to be mindful of the senses, especially with our eyes, looking at screens all day now, making sure that we're taking good care of our eyes, with our ears, because at least the eyes we can close and rest, but the ears we can't close, right? That's the one sense that's always on. And in Ayurveda, sometimes we recommend, especially to pacify vata at night, is to put those cotton balls, maybe a little bit of sesame oil on a cotton ball, and put in your ear to create that cocoon. So you're shutting down that sense.
That sounds yummy.
Yeah. And then, of course, with the sense of touch, we talk about pacifying with abhyanga, with the oil massage. Trying to go through all the senses now that I started. The sense of taste, right? We're scraping our tongue, and then with a cleansing, with our seasonal cleanses, we're making sure that our taste buds are rejuvenated, and because they can become desensitized to processed foods.
Yeah. When I first started doing tongue scraping, I remember, you're not supposed to do it very hard. You're not supposed to destroy the taste buds. But I remember when I first started doing it, I was like, oh my gosh, I taste my food differently. It kind of woke them up a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. And then just giving your taste buds a break, because, during the cleanse, it's pretty, there's some spices there, but it's relatively bland. But it's good to give your taste buds a break.
Right.
Because they just get overloaded, and then they want more spice, more heat.
Right.
So I love that idea of pacifying the senses and then connecting to them again, and just being aware that that's how we take information in from the outside world. So if our senses are what feeds information to our body, to our internal body, right, that we need to be aware of what we're exposing our senses to.
Right. That brings me back to Partap Chauhan, the telemedicine man. He started off his talk by saying, in Ayurveda, food is what you put into your mind, and it's not just physical food. He said, everything we see, hear, touch, feel, taste is food for the mind.
Right.
Yeah. And so, that gets me to thinking, granted, I want to stay up with the news, but I don't want to spend more than about 10 minutes with the highlights, because it is food. Right. It's the food of my mind. And with what's going on in the world right now, I really don't want to fill my mind up with too much of that stuff. You know?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, we really have to pay attention to what we're surrounding ourselves with, who we're surrounding ourselves with, what we're listening to. If we're working even on a computer, or do you have the radio on? Do you have some other noise in the background? That's very vata aggravating. And we've already discussed in several episodes how most of us are vata aggravated anyway, because our society is very vata provoking. So just being aware of, how much silence do you have in your day?
Right. I've been making a point in my car. I could turn on an audiobook or some chanting music, but I've just been making a point to just be quiet with myself in my car. One of the speakers at NAMA said that the original mind is Sattvic. It is pure, calm, and clear, and it understands true knowledge. But with our current lifestyle, the mind is in Rajas. It's disturbed. It has wrong or incomplete knowledge. It's, filled with hyperactivity, impatience, pride, envy, anger, hatred, fear, aggression, overconfident, criticizing, or also your mind can be in tamas. It can be confused and ignorant and have incorrect knowledge and depressed and delusional and lazy and selfish and negative. So really making a point to find or uncover the sattva that is in your mind. It's there. We just have to uncover the rajas and the tamas and find our way back to sattva.
Yeah, and I think that quietness is the way to do that, because without the quietness, we can't hear our soul talking to us. So creativity comes from quietness. So it's really important just to take time to be quiet. Even you could be doing some automatic writing where it's just letting your thoughts flow through and out onto paper. That would be a great thing to do. And I recommend that to clients like first thing in the morning. But just having that quiet time so you can listen to your body. Right. So you can check in. How do I feel? What do I need today to nourish me? And hear if there's any intuition that needs to come through.
Exactly. And, getting to that very quiet, still place in your mind, what I'm calling sattva, clear, calm, and alert. When the mind is in sattva or in rajas or tamas, it controls the senses. And, when the mind is in sattva, it's going to control the senses differently. The mind also controls the majority of our speech. Right. So depending on if we're in rajas, tamas, or sattva, our speech will be impacted. The mind controls the majority of our actions. So if your mind is in rajas, tamas, or sattva, your actions will be different. Your decision making. I mean, there's so many things that are influenced via the mind and the state of the mind. Your whole life is going to look completely different if you're running around with a rajas mind as opposed to a sattvic mind or a tamas mind. Your relationships are going to be different. Your decisions are going to be different. How you speak, how you think, how you feel, the choices you make. It all comes back to the mind. It's so funny. I just love this talk by Partap. He said that when you're in a fight, when you're having a difficult time in your relationships with another person, if your mind is in rajas, meaning you're angry or impatient or intolerant, he said you can 100% guarantee that you are wrong, that there is something you're not seeing clearly. And if both sides are in rajas, both sides are angry and upset, both sides have something to learn. They're both having misperception.
Right.
So I just thought that was interesting. Even if the content of what you're trying to get across to your friend is correct, even if, you have clarity about what it is you're trying to articulate, if you're doing it in a way that has rajas and fire and wind and anger, there is something about that has misperception, and therefore you're going to get bitten by. Like, don't think you're so smart, Right.
And also I think that rajas can really cloud the mind, because that actually helps me to understand the situation we're in today in the world and wondering why there's so many problems and the leaders are acting a certain way. And for me, it's because, their mind is so rajasic that they can't think clearly, that they're so power hungry or greedy or whatever, that is purely clouding their judgment. Because you wonder, like, when they lay down at night, isn't their conscious play up? Don't they think, morally this isn't good? No, because they're so rajasic a mindset. At least that's my perception of it. And that's how I can figure it out in my head. I'm like, I guess their mind is so rajasic, they can't think of what would be morally right or what I'm doing is is wrong. It's not good on a soul level. It's wrong for the people, and I should be acting differently or saying things differently. But I think the Rajas really just clouds that, shrouds it, and they don't even have that consciousness or clarity.
Yeah, I know for myself, when I'm in Rajas, there is so little self-reflection and self-awareness. Everything's going out. I'm blaming. I'm looking for the answers outside of myself. And, one of the main principles in Patanjali's Yoga Sutra is this idea of pratipaksha bhavana, which is basically when you realize that you're in that state, cultivate the opposite positive qualities. So if I'm having fear, I should be meditating on courage. If I'm having grief, I should meditate on joy. If I'm having anger, I should meditate on compassion. And in that way, we will take ourselves out of the Rajas and back to Sattva and start to come inward again and then see things clearly.
Right. But the problem is, when does that clarity come? I think if you're gone so far into Rajas, that I think it's unless there's a dark night of the soul, or there is something big event that happens, which oftentimes it does, in order to pull you back to neutral. Do you understand what I'm saying? Yeah.
Oh, it takes, how long do I want to get crushed and beat up, right? That's my question to myself. Okay, I've suffered one day. Am I ready to cultivate the opposite? Okay, now I've suffered a week.
Right.
Amy, are you ready? This is what Yoga Sutra 215 says, is you have to hit rock bottom before you're going to look at yourself. And then Yoga Sutra 216 says, hey, the best day of your life is when you've hit rock bottom and you're ready to try a new path, right? So
absolutely. Yeah, and I think yes, and I think like your Rajas, like I talked about before, my Rajas would be like I was like a erupting volcano, and at times my temper would come up. But we can easily reflect on that because we haven't gone too far into the Rajasic state of mind. However, for people who live a lifestyle, who are eating the wrong foods, are living out of alignment with themselves, and have really gone into that Rajasic mental guna, then they need that, that 2x4 from the universe to hold them in place.
Yeah, and what makes me sad, my past behavior and probably some of my current behavior and the people I love's behavior, is that the damage that we do before we get hit by the 2x4. And I think once you get hit by the 2x4, if you're then willing to go inward and look at your part in it, it is devastating to see the damage that we cause in our Rajas.
Right, but that's where self-compassion comes in, right?
Yeah, 100%.
And we're all just learning, and nobody's perfect, and we could go back on, and I could go back on so much, many mistakes I've made and situations where I felt I didn't act in a proper way or in a Sattvic way, and beat ourselves up. But what's the point? It's history. So it's just all about acknowledging it, saying, okay, yeah, that sucked. I wasn't my highest self then, but I'm going to do better going forward. And that's all we can look to, is going forward and trying to improve and educate ourselves on how do I maintain that Sattvic mindset, so I can be balanced and I can, live in alignment where my senses are balanced and listen to my soul. And that's how we get to that with Ayurveda, right? Ayurveda and
Absolutely.
Yoga, I should say. Yes.
Yeah. And, this kind of brings me to a talk that Arun Deva gave, and I think you're going to have Arun on this show
I've already
as a guest.
Him. Yes, thank you for that connection.
Yeah, so he spoke at Nama about emotional healing through yoga, therapy, and Ayurveda, and it's something he said was so fascinating to me that connects to our conversation here. He said, in the ancient Ayurvedic texts, the first and second chakra, they were one.
Oh, wow.
Right. So he said, the first chakra is about survival. The second chakra is about pleasure. And there's a very small distance between them. So when are you in survival? When are you in pleasure? And he basically said that so many of us are confused about what is survival and what is pleasure. They're kind of two sides of the same coin.
Wow.
And that the ancient texts didn't differentiate between 1 and 2. It was only later that they added the second chakra. So for me, when I'm thinking about rajas and I'm thinking about relationships and, all of this, I think that's a really interesting thing to think about, that when do you go from I'm trying to survive and pay my bills to I want this, I desire that, I deserve this, right. I want this beautiful thing, right? And that really we need to get really clear about how much do we really need? How greedy are we? How angry are we that we can't have X, Y, Z?
Wow, that's interesting. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So to me, that's kind of the heart of the issue when it comes to rajas and the mind and difficult relationships. How much are we really trying to squeeze out of the other person or take out of Mother Earth or push ourselves to achieve for what's really not needed? We have enough. Most of us have enough.
That makes so much sense.
Yeah.
Because if take our materialism, right? If that is tied to our survival, then that makes sense that why we have this consumerism going on. We're looking for love and happiness because, as we know, most of society, we're living in the lower 2 or 3 chakras. But in order to get that love from within and knowing that everything is already inside us, that we must rise up through the chakras in order to understand that we already have everything inside us, that our happiness is not going to be found outside of ourselves, that we need to do the work and the study on ourselves so that we know it's inside us. So that makes so much sense, that if we are just living in those lower 2 or 3 chakras, that we don't have that understanding, so we're looking for it in materialism or in relationships, but that's never going to satisfy us.
Right. And so I've really been thinking about that since Arun mentioned it. And, I think we're all striving to get ahead and build our businesses and reach people and make a difference in the world. But that's all pleasure.
Yeah.
Right? Survival, and I have enough food, I have shelter, I have clothing, I have a loving family. That's what I need. Everything else is icing on the cake. Right. So I don't know, that kind of helps me chill out my Rajas mind a bit and helps me, just kind of to back it off a little bit and not get quite so ambitious.
Right. I understand. So you're saying, like, once I meet my basic survival needs, that's a layer of contentment in itself.
And maybe the only layer of contentment that's really needed.
Right.
Really. I mean, I'm happiest when I'm at home with my family and my animals and my husband, and we're having a home-cooked meal, and we're cuddling each other for the evening. I mean, what more do I need that is making me so rajas and go, right? Mm-hmm. So just something to think about. I thought that was an interesting
it's beautiful
little tidbit from
absolutely. As we get caught up in our, in our worlds and in our own little stories and think that we need more, and what's the latest app, and what's, in regards to business, and what's the latest social media that I need to be advertising on. And it's, coming back to that. Wait, now I have my basic needs and I'm, I'm happy with those. How much do I need to spin myself out in order to achieve more? Yeah.
And also, I'm sure there's a lot of Ayurvedic practitioners and yoga teachers and yoga therapists that listen to this podcast, and I can hear already in their minds, but I'm not making a living. I'm not able to survive on, a yogic salary. And all I can say to that is what I say to people, and it's a very harsh message, but I truly feel like the universe decides our dharma, our life purpose. It takes into consideration our karma, right? The vasanas that we've accumulated over time. And not everybody is going to be able to make a living and survive doing yoga and Ayurveda. It's just sad, but we're not there yet. Society isn't there. And, I have a full-time day job that I go to. Mm-hmm. And I've gone there for 21 years. And I keep asking the universe, is it time for me to, move past this job? And the universe keeps saying, no, we really love having you live your dharma and your karma. And so I think we as yoga teachers and Ayurvedic people get so upset that we might have to do something else. But even Krishnamacharya, who is a renowned yoga master, there were times he had to go out in the field and pick coffee beans to feed his family as a renowned yoga master, right? So I don't know. I'm just really thinking about this idea of survival versus pleasure and what we're willing to do and unwilling to do, and kind of just really pondering all of it.
Yeah, it's definitely very interesting. That's really, I've never heard that before, that insight that the lower two chakras used to be connected.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah. So what's next, Amy?
Well, I'm just going through my notes here, just salivating over all of them.
There was a lot of talk on the microbiome, wasn't there?
Oh, yeah. Okay, the microbiome is like it's not the newest because it's been around for thousands of years, but the research that's coming out on microbiome and not only the connection to, GI tract things, right? Of course, that makes sense. Well, first of all, maybe we should define what the microbiome is for those people who aren't as familiar with it. Do you want to take a shot, or do you want me to? Or
Sure, yeah. The microbiome is our gastrointestinal tract, which basically goes from our mouth to our anus. And there are how many? There's more bacteria in our gut than cells in our body. Is it like a 10-to-1 ratio or something? I think it's 10-to-1.
Well, what they said was we have over 1,000 bacteria species in our large intestine alone. And that, you're born with 20,000 genes, your DNA. Right. But the gut microbiome makes up a huge amount of your genome. Yeah. And so your diet and your lifestyle and your sleep patterns and your stress levels, they all impact this huge colony of bacteria from your mouth to your anus, as you said. And every single thing you put in your mouth either feeds these little bacteria and makes them happy and grow and gives you prana and energy and health, or it kills them. Right. And when these big colonies of bacteria start to die off, your health goes downhill. Yeah. So things like diet soda can just take a big bunch of them out. So, the microbiome is the newest and greatest thing in research. And which
Ayurveda knew over 5,000 years ago.
Yes.
But modern science is now going, hey, they were onto something.
Right. So there's this scientist, her first name is Diane. I didn't get her last name, but she's a neuroscientist at the University of Montana. And she studies neuroscience and microbiome. And what she told us at NAMA is that they're seeing huge correlations between your microbiome and things like schizophrenia, anxiety, depression, obesity, irritable bowel syndrome, and the health of your immune system. Yeah. And so that's fascinating, because to think that what you're feeding your microbiome, not just with food, because it's also the way to feed microbiome is to walk in nature and to be in loving relationships and to get sunshine. I mean, there's many, many ways that we actually feed this colony of bacteria within us.
It comes back to the senses, right?
Right.
So the senses, pacifying our senses, it feeds the microbiome, I guess you could say.
Right. And so Diane from the University of Montana, she has been studying microbiome, depression, anxiety, and autism. And she says that there are certain mice that they study, which makes me so sad, but they can see that the mice have very, very few bacteria species, not very diverse and not very much bacteria in their microbiome. And when they take these mice that have a very, very poor microbiome health and they stress them out, they have a huge hormonal response to the stress, meaning hormones just start pumping through them out of correlation with what you would normally expect. But because the microbiome isn't healthy, they can't tolerate even mild stress. Wow. And this is so interesting if you think about us as women. Does this transfer that when my microbiome isn't happy and I get stressed out, my hormones go all over the place? And I can attest that, yes, that happens. When I haven't been eating well and meditating and taking care of myself, I'm sure my microbiome have died off. And the tiniest little things will start giving me terrible, terrible hot flashes.
Right.
Yeah. So the other thing she talked about is that when you look at the microbiome populations of bacteria in depressed people, they're totally different than a non-depressed person. Wow. And this is kind of gross to talk about, but it's the latest research. It's called fecal transplants. Oh, yeah. And they take the feces of a very healthy person who has great microbiome, and they implant them into a person with really poor microbiome. And when the good microbiome comes in, it starts transforming the whole community of microbiome and actually showing all the sick microbiome inside of us how to be healthy again.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm like, hey, come join this party. We're much more healthy over here.
Yeah, we're having fun.
Isn't that
over
amazing?
Here. And so they're saying,
go ahead.
Oh, just one more thing. I'm so excited about it. They're saying that we could actually treat psychiatric diseases like schizophrenia with helping people build up a healthier microbiome.
Right.
That's exciting.
It's amazing. And so if they're implanting the fecal matter into another person, I guess those gut bugs, those microbiome, colonize and multiply fine, I guess. I'm sure it's probably,
right.
It depends
well,
on the
I think they changed, they changed their whole lifestyle. So number one, they do the transplant, but then they teach the person how to live a lifestyle where the new microbiome will grow and the not so healthy ones will die off.
They make a better environment for those new gut bugs so that they want to stay and party.
Yeah. And so one example she gave is that people with bipolar disorder have a very, very different microbiome. And so they do a transplant. They help them choose brand new foods that will support the new microbiome. They talk to them about, the seasons and how the seasons and the times of day and the lifestyle practices can support this new colony of microbiome. And they've had really good success. Same thing with Parkinson's.
Yeah.
It's just shocking.
Amazing. Yeah. Well, they call, the gut now is the second brain, right? That it's all connected. And how we ever thought that each system in the body was not connected is bizarre, that we even thought that was, that was the way it was, but that everything is connected. But I saw this when I worked with the Dr. Sujata in Bali. I saw Alzheimer's patients come in and they were in a severe case of Alzheimer's. And after a week of, or the 3 weeks, I should say, of panchakarma and treatments and bastis and enemas, that they were a different person by the time they left. They went from, have to be minded 24/7 because, they weren't in control of their own actions, to, by the end, totally pacified, coherent, and just able to live their life. And that was just with, making sure that the microbiome was working well, good lifestyle management, good dinacharya, daily self-care practices. It's just amazing.
Right. I mean, and she attributes that when it comes to Alzheimer's and dementia, she says that's a microbiome thing, but specifically there's a lot of inflammation in the gut.
Yeah.
And that gut inflammation leads to cognitive decline and dementia. And if you can get the inflammation to come down and get the microbiome to be healthy, the symptoms will reverse.
Right. Inflammation is responsible for so much.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So I'll just give you a few more tips of what she said can help increase your microbiome. She said that the microbiome of vegetarian people versus meat eaters is totally different, and that we would want to steer towards vegetarianism to help the microbiome be happy and healthy and flourishing. She said the people in the United States have the least diverse microbiome, which is not good. You want 1,000 diverse species in there, but our diets are not providing us with that. She said the foods that we should increase to get that diverse microbiome are whole grains, fruits, nuts, legumes, ghee. That's really where it's at in terms of...
Microbiome loves ghee.
Yes. She said a high fat and sugar and white flour diet kills off the microbiome, which is, of course, what most Westerners eat. And she said that Ayurvedic spices can have a huge effect on microbiome, which, of course, we know from Ayurveda, the spices aren't just for taste. They're actually medicine in the food. So do you want to add anything to that?
Oh, I just did a whole episode, Amy, that came out, was it last week or 2 weeks ago, on the spices. And I went through all the spices and their healing properties. So for those of you out there listening who haven't checked it out, you can go ahead and listen to that, because the spices are nature's medicine. And they are absolutely amazing and can have so much healing properties and are completely safe. And this is how you become your own healer in your kitchen with your spice rack, and just playing around with these spices, and it's a wonderful thing to do, to see how it affects the body. But I wanted to go back to ghee, and the reason that ghee is so good for your microbiome, and I encourage everybody to use ghee, which for those of you who are not familiar, it's clarified butter. It's basically taking organic unsalted butter and just boiling off the milk solids, so there's no milk solids in it, so it's just a pure ghee. And the reason that the microbiome loves it so much is that I'm going to tongue twister here, the gut bugs, the microbiome makes the same components as the butyric acid in the ghee. So basically, the microbiome knows exactly what to do with it. It's like, hey, we recognize you. You're made up of the same components as what we make, essentially. And that's the body, or the microbiome can utilize that ghee straight away. It's so pacifying. It really builds a good environment for the gut bugs, and they just love it.
Yeah.
Do you have anything more to add on that?
Well, the one thing I kind of wanted to circle back to was this idea of how to keep your microbiome healthy. We've talked about your diet. We've talked about, right lifestyle, right relationship, but also over exercising.
Oh, yeah.
The people who are in the gym 7 hours a day, 3 hours a day, whatever, they kill off their microbiome. Yeah. You want to exercise at 60 to 70% of your maximum ability. And,
that's huge.
Listen to your body.
That's huge.
Huge.
Just being in that world, definitely myself, as you know from my story, but I see so many people over exercising, and we still holding on to that more is better, and we need to push harder, and it's so crippling to our body and to our microbiome.
Right. Exactly. Diane also talked about how if we don't get enough sleep, that the bacteria leak out of your gut, leaky gut syndrome, and those bacteria go into the circulation of your blood, causing inflammation. So I never really thought about, wow, if I get 5 hours of sleep one night, the microbiome bacteria are going to go run around my body and cause inflammation. Like that's fascinating,
isn't
right?
It? Yeah. Because I guess they're not getting to do, if you're not getting to sleep at the right hours in accordance with the circadian rhythms, that they're not getting to do the carry out the function they need to in order to prepare you for the next day. But there's also so much stress.
That's exactly right. I mean, she said that when we have dysfunctional changes to our circadian rhythm, it decreases your microbiome. So if you work a night shift and stay up all night, that kills off a bunch of your microbiome. And then she also said that research is supporting that when people decrease their stress, the microbiome grows and gets healthier and more diverse and flourishes. So stress is a huge part of keeping your microbiome healthy, which is where yoga and yoga therapy come in.
Yeah. Absolutely. And living in tune with the circadian rhythms is huge now. And now there's been a lot of research done to show that we need to be careful, what time we're doing these activities like eating, sleeping, meditating, resting, working, so that they're in sync with the circadian rhythms rather than going against them and causing issues.
Yeah, there was 2 scientists in 2017 that won the Nobel Peace Prize.
That's right.
for researching these circadian rhythms. And basically what they said matched up with Ayurveda just beautifully. And I laughed. I didn't know if they know about Ayurveda or if they just came to this on their own accord.
Well, I hope they somewhere along their research found some Ayurveda information. It's like, somebody was talking about this 5,000 years ago.
Right.
I hope they did. I hope they weren't. It wasn't that narrow. But yeah, so end result here is the microbiome is the key to our health, and that we really need to look at everything, our lifestyle, what we're taking in through our senses, our relationships, our work, our stress. And it can sound a little bit overwhelming, but when it comes to your health and having a good lifestyle that you enjoy rather than running around and being stressed out, it's worth stopping and doing a review of your life and saying, okay, what's important? Like you said, Amy, like, what do I need for survival? And then start from there. Right.
And what do I need to get my microbiome happy? I mean, to me, that's part of survival. That's not pleasure. So I take care of all of that first before I start worrying about where I'm going to be shopping on Saturday morning for more clothes that I don't need.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because I told you before the show began that I have some college students, interns, helping me figure out social media and Instagram. And so I have this new Instagram account called Optimal State. And they told me, stop taking pictures of your pets. That's not doing anybody any good. They said, we want to know how you live your life. We want to know what tea you drink. We want to know what ghee is and why that helps. We want to know what kind of coffee substitute that you have to balance all your Ayurvedic doshas.
Right.
And they said, why aren't you posting that on Instagram? Just go through your life every day. Okay, here's why I do this. Here's why I do an Abhyanga oil massage. Here's why I take a warm bath. Here's why I go in the sauna. Here. And they said, show us that. That's what we want to learn. Right. That's what your audience wants to learn. So I'm kind of getting into the mode that all these things I take for granted and do for self-care just because I do them. All of our audience wants to know about these things too, that we should start to share that. And I think you do a great job of that, Colette.
Thanks. I just shared I went to make a cup of herbal tea this week, and it was a day that I usually post on my Instagram. And I just realized I have a herbal tea problem. I had so many boxes of herbal teas, and I get really excited about them. So I just did a little quick video on Instagram on the type of herbal teas that I had. But yeah, I think it is important. And of course, then we're showing we practice what we preach, and that energy goes through. Like you started off this episode with, that at the NAMA conference, you felt that these people are really integrating their practices and they're living holistically. And you can just sense that energy when people are actually practicing what they preach and just sharing that with others. So maybe that we can inspire others as well.
Exactly. And I tell myself and I tell my students that the best advertisement you can have for your business to grow it is to start doing these things and get your microbiome in check and get your mind into sattva and get my senses going inward instead of outward, that people feel it. And when they feel it, they don't know why. It's unconscious, but they want to come work with you.
Right.
And as long as we are in Rajas mind and don't have control over our senses and our microbiome is dead, nobody's going to be attracted to working with us.
No, because if we have a Rajas mindset, we become competitive and we become fearful. So we're like, I'm not going to work with her. She's going to steal all my stuff. Or I'm not going to tell people all this information, because if I give it all out there, how am I going to, make a living? But when you're Sattvic, you're like, I'm just going to share this information. And then if people want to do some work with me, they'll come people will find me, and it's just much more easeful. There's no fear, there's no competition, there's more collaboration, there's more ease, and there's more giving. And you don't worry or stress or overthink and analyze every little step. You just be, and then whatever is meant for you will come.
And that's why I think this podcast is so successful. You are being so generous and so kind and so giving, and 21,000 downloads as of today. Woohoo! Right? And
thanks,
and it's you're not giving it to receive anything, but in fact, that's what's happening.
Right. And thank you so much for your kind words. Yes, I do think what you put out there is important. And if there's a gripping, if there's a withholding of information, or I think when we're really pushing and just not in alignment, that energy is there and people can sense it and feel it. Whereas if you're just open and honest and just pure of heart. And so when you were talking earlier, Amy, about, people trying to make it in the world, the Ayurvedic or the yoga community, the best thing you can do is work on yourself, because when you're in balance, you'll get the creativity coming through to find out what is your unique gift and do that, and then people will come.
I believe that 100%. And, if you're not making it, maybe go get another job so that you can give yourself the freedom to experiment with this.
Right.
And I think you'll see.
If you're pushing, it won't come.
When you're in fear and in survival, it's very, very hard to start living this stuff. Right. You almost have to get your basic needs met. And then from there, you can have a lot of heart expansion and mind expansion and the feeling of being able to give to the world.
Right. And there's a lot of trial and error. I mean, I went through a lot of different things. I was working in a holistic health center in California. I was doing the Ayurvedic treatments, and I've gone through lots of different renditions until I've stumbled on something going, I think this is working. And people seem to like it. So I'm going to go with it. So we have to experiment and find our thing. And it will never come from copying somebody else. You got to find your thing.
I love that. Can we end on that note?
Yes, ma'am.
Because I think it's so true. Your dharma, your karma, your expression in this world will come from inside of you, from 7 generations back of your ancestors, to bring forward your creative power and Shakti. Mm-hmm. You can't take somebody else's and try to replicate that. It's just not going to work.
No. It won't, and people will feel it. You have to be authentic and just keep experimenting to find your thing. And then when you find it, whatever it is, do that and be happy.
100%.
All right. Thanks, Amy. That was so amazing to get an insight into all that wonderful Nama information. Really appreciate you sharing that with us.
And can I just tell you one more thing? The NAMA conference next year is at that brand new, really cool yoga meditation Ayurvedic center called 1440, which is basically, the number of seconds in a day, and we're supposed to be present every single day. So it's in Northern California at 1440, and I'm going to see if I can even tell you. It is going to be April 26th, 27th, and 28th, if you'd like to put that into your calendar.
I'm going. I'm putting it out there now. So anyone else wants to join us there? Yes, I'm definitely going next year. Well, that's a date then. All right, my dear. Thank you so much. Always love our chats. Until next time, take good care of yourself.
You too.
Wasn't that great getting the inside scoop from Amy all about the NAMA conference? It was so generous of her to share her notes with us. So in this episode, we talked about the importance of lifestyle when it comes to the microbiome. And we know that the microbiome, the GI tract, is housing 70 to 80% of our immunity. So making sure that we have good lifestyle practices is so important. And this is where my Daily Habits for Holistic Health course comes in. And it's actually starting on May 10th, 2018. And in this course, we're going to learn about the circadian rhythms in detail and why it's so important to structure your day in tune with these energies rather than going against them and suffering. So it's important at what time of the day we eat, we sleep, we work, when to do your focus work, when to do creative work, and lots more detail in this course about how to keep your body and mind in balance with these daily self-care habits so that you can prevent illness, you can live a life that's sattvic and you're full of vitality and energy and able to have clarity of mind as well. So if you want to join us on this Daily Habits course, it's a month self-guided, and I take the group through and support you as well to keep you on track and to keep you accountable. And we can communicate in the Facebook group. So if you're interested in joining that, just find the link in the show notes, or you can also go to my website, elementshealingandwellbeing.com, and just go to the events tab. It's right there, the Daily Habits course. So I hope you can join us. It's a really great course for setting that foundation of holistic healthcare habits. Okay, so that's the show for today. I hope you enjoy this chat with Amy, and I look forward to connecting with you soon. Take good care of yourself and be well.